Alright, shout out everyone, this week Ration. So another update po tayo mga idol para sa barangay and SKE election. So alam nating hindi pa sigurado kung matutuloy o mapuspon ba itong barangay and SKE election ngayong darating December 5, 2022. So ganun pa man, ngayong araw ay pakinggan muna natin itong Zenith Plenary. Ayan yung debate between kay Senator Gatchalian and of course sa author Senator Imee Marcos.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this is a classic case of deja vu. Because I'm 3 days away from exactly 3 years ago when I stood in the middle of the session hall interpolating Senator Imee Marcos on the same topic.
Right.
Exactly the same topic.
That's
That
right.
was September 23, 2019.
Oh my goodness.
She was also defending the bill to postpone elections. And I stood and asked a few questions. So, Mr. President, because it's deja vu, I will ask exactly the same questions. Just for the record, Mr. President, and this is taking off from the good minority leader's questions earlier. I heard him talk about incumbency and referendum for incumbent officials, Mr. President. And let me start off, Mr. President, for constituents, 3 years of a performing barangay captain is too short.
Yeah.
But if you extend it 4 years, 4.5 years, for a kapitan who doesn't perform, who is abusive, who is not present in the barangay hall, that's a lifetime, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, my question is mechanisms for airing and also for kapitans who are not performing, those who are not diligent with their work. So my question to the good sponsor is what are the mechanisms to discipline kapitans who are not performing, kapitans who are abusive, kapitans who doesn't show to work? Talagang nangyayari ho yan, Mr. President. And even in our city, we have kapitans who are violators of the law. So what are the mechanisms for our constituents so that those who are listening right now will have an idea on where to go and what type of mechanisms they can tap into so that kapitans can be disciplined?
Yes, I think the DILG appears to have adequate grievance mechanisms in place for non-performing kapitans. In fact, during the COVID pandemic, the argument can be made that they were overused. And even performing and aggressive kapitans were actually prosecuted and arrested for very little cause.
So DILG will be a venue for our constituents to go to.
Yes, that's correct. They should be able to go to the DILG and file charges if they're merited. Of course, the DILG can suspend and remove kapitans as the case may be, as they have in the past.
Okay. Mr. President, what is the procedure for our constituents to follow when they go with the DILG route? What are the steps that what are the steps that they should follow in order to report to the DILG?
If I may, the first step is not in fact the DILG. I sort of jumped the gun. The first thing is to file a verified complaint against the barangay captain before the Sangguniang Bayan concerned, the Sangguniang Panlunsod, or in some cases, when I was a governor, directly to the Sangguniang Panlalawigan.
So, Mr. President, if I understand it correct from the good sponsor, our constituents can file a complaint against a kapitan through the Sangguniang Panlunsod, Sangguniang Bayan, or Sangguniang Panlalawigan.
That's correct. That's my understanding. And it's stated in the law, and it's clear in the local government code that that is the route to go. Otherwise, you can go direct to the DILG and file the same complaint.
Okay. Mr. President, indeed, in the local government code, I think it's section 60, the grounds for disciplinary action is there, and as well as the procedures for our constituents to follow when they opt to file against a kapitan through the Sangguniang
Sanggunian.
Panlalawigan, Sangguniang Bayan, Sangguniang Panlunsod level. Mr. President, I'd like to ask the good sponsor if she has the data right now. When we postponed the elections in 2018, does she have any report of how many kapitans were reported to their own sanggunians? How many kapitans were in fact suspended or removed because of possible violations of law or possible dereliction of duty?
Right now, I don't think we have the data on hand, and I've been asking the DILG just to prove the point for this
Yes.
postponement, if truth be told. I think like Senator Gatchalian, I merely have media reports.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President. Maybe we can, may I ask the good sponsor to request, maybe we can also ask the DILG to furnish us a copy. I know for a fact, Mr. President, I'm stating a fact that in Valenzuela, we actually suspended one kapitan
Oh, there we
for
go.
violating a law and also abuse of power. But this is just goes to show, I just want to prove the point that the mechanisms are functioning.
They're functioning. That's
So-
correct. I think we had a series of suspensions as well in Ilocos Norte,
Yes.
so I believe they work.
Correct. So our constituents need not fear that those kapitans who are not performing or erring kapitans will stay there, no, and abuse their power some more because we extended the election. In fact, there are mechanisms under local government code as practiced by in Ilocos and also in Valenzuela, and these mechanisms are functioning. No? And the DILG faithfully allows the local government to perform their functions to discipline barangay captains. But just to put on record, we would like to request from DILG that
Yes.
record so that we can insert that into the record and demonstrate again, no, to the public that these mechanisms are functioning.
I will certainly push for that because that's valuable information, and the minority leader evinced the same request and need for information.
Thank you, Mr. President. How about the ombudsman, Mr. President? Is this a venue for airing kapitans?
In 2020 po, 89
Yes, my understanding is the ombudsman is another venue in 2020.
89 po nung barangay suspended.
89 punong barangays were actually suspended following charges filed with the ombudsman.
And this is from the years which Madam
They were
Sponsor?
placed on a 6-month preventive suspension. I'm reading from 2020. This involved the irregularities and anomalies involving the implementation of the first tranche of the SAP. The first batch of ayuda, nagkagulo, di ba? So, may 89 na punong barangay nationwide na sinuspend ng DILG through the ombudsman. Ang nag-file si Secretary Anyo.
Yeah. So, Mr. President, kasi minsan, not minsan, but kadalasan kinakatakutan rin ng ating mga constituents na si Kapitan kakampi ni Mayor, no, or ni Governor. At kahit magfa-file ho sila sa sanggunian, baka walang mangyari. But
So tama 'yan, tama 'yan. Hindi lang ano 'yan, hindi lang akala. So hindi totoo talaga 'yan na madalas yung mga kapitan po natin ay malakas yung kapit sa mayor o kaya sa mga congressman and gobernador. Kaya hindi basta-basta rin ma-complain ng ating mga kababayan.
I just want to also put on record, there's another venue, which is the ombudsman.
That's
In
right.
fact, as you mentioned, there were about 40 plus kapitans who were suspended because of misuse of the SAP, the Social Amelioration Program that was downloaded to the local government units. No? So the ombudsman is another venue, and again, Mr. President, we would like to request the good sponsor to furnish this representation, a copy of those cases that were filed and those kapitans that were suspended or even removed, no?
Oo, tama. Kasi hindi na natin nabalitaan eh. Nasa
Correct.
dyaryo lang eh. Tapos dumami na sila ng dumami pala.
Correct, correct. Just again to demonstrate to our constituents that we have mechanisms that
Thank
they
you.
can
That's
run
correct.
to. How about the office of the president, Mr. President? Is that another venue that our capitans, our constituents can run to?
Yes, I believe so. Because I have personally received complaints 2016 as soon as President Duterte instituted the hotline, for example, to Malacanang. Any and all complaints were received by Malacanang at that juncture. I'm not certain what occurred since then, but I believe the hotlines were very valuable for airing citizens' complaints of any nature.
Okay, Mr. President, I just want to get more details on that so they can report to the hotlines. Anyone, no? Anyone under the supervision of the president.
I'm not sure if the new administration maintains the hotlines, but I do recall in 2016 when they were very new, even prank complaints were being called in simply to see if the hotline was working.
But Mr. President, can our constituents, extreme, no? This is an extreme case, report directly to the office of the president? And by law, can the office of the president investigate, suspend airing capitans?
I'm not certain. I'm not aware of that happening, but I don't see why that wouldn't happen, particularly in the case of the DILG, who is, after all, the alter ego of the president.
So the president can instruct the DILG to investigate, and the DILG, does the DILG has the power to suspend the kapitan, or does it have to go through the local government unit?
I recall that it was, at least in the case of a few mayors who were suspended during my time, it was still an action by the Sanggunian, but it was upheld by the OP. The Office of the President, the legal officer, upheld the suspension, and so it was implemented by the DILG in conjunction with the PNP.
Okay. All right.
Order pa. 1990. Yung
I also would like to mention that in 1990, an administrative order was issued allowing the president to undertake investigations and even set up investigating groups from the PMS and the Presidential Legal Counsel whenever it was necessary.
And they can investigate barangay officials all the way down to the barangay officials, because what I understand from the local government code is the president has primary jurisdiction over mayors and governors. However, for barangay officials, it's the sanggunian, respective sanggunians, who have jurisdiction over them. No? So I just want to get a clarification from the good sponsor if the hierarchy, if that is the hierarchy, no? That the local officials, no, through the sanggunian, has jurisdiction over the barangays and they can discipline the barangays.
I think that should be correct in both theory and practice. But as I mentioned, in 1990, President Aquino issued an administrative order explicitly stating that administrative complaints against even barangay captains and members of the Sangguniang Barangay could be filed at the Sanggunian and investigated by the Office of the President.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President, for that
I
clarification.
believe in that case, the action would still derive from the Sanggunian.
Sanggunian. So the best case for our constituents is to go through the Sanggunian.
That's correct.
And if they are not confident or convinced, they can go to the ombudsman
That's correct.
in that
Yes,
in that
po.
case. And the last case will be the office of the president.
Yes.
Yes.
That's correct.
All right, Mr. President. Well, Mr. President, I just want to spread into the records the mechanisms for our constituents to to tap into in cases where we have kapitans who are not functioning. And nangyayari yan talaga. I am sure the good sponsor who was a long-time governor of Ilocos Norte have experienced kapitans who are not cooperative or not functioning. And we should make sure that our constituents, our people, are clear about the mechanisms that they can employ, so that if this happens to their barangays, because barangay is very close to to our people's heart, they can actually tap into these mechanisms by law, and the mechanisms, as we demonstrated, are functioning. So once again, thank you very much to good sponsor. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much also to Senator Gatchalian for raising these very valuable points. After all, we will be doubling the term in case, doubling the stated term of the barangays, and the voters should be reassured that they have a grievance mechanism.
Mr. President, this is the second time I asked the good sponsor about the postponement of the barangay. Exactly the same questions in 2019. Hopefully, this will be the last. But I thank the good sponsor for her very detailed answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hopefully, wala nang deja vu.
So, yung mga idol, no, yung discussion, ayan, kay Senator Gatchalian and of course kay Senator Imee Marcos regarding po sa postponement ng barangay and SKE election. So, very interesting naman ang kanilang pinag-usapan at klaro naman yung mga sagot ni Senator Imee Marcos. So, antayin na lang natin yung final na decision dyan mga idol para sa postponement ng barangay and SKE election. Abang-abang lang po tayo. Huwag kalimutan mag-subscribe sa ating channel kung hindi pa kayo nakapag-subscribe, and like po yung ating video. Maraming salamat and God bless everyone. Thank you.